محمد وآل محمد صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل ما شاء الله تقبل اذان دو
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن علي ولي الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. صلاة المغرب إني وجهت وجهي وسلمت أمري للذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا مسلما ملة إبراهيم وما أنا من المشركين. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته وأقوات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. إلهي تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات وإنك على كل شيء قدير. وصل اللهم على محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله والخير الأسماء الحسنى كلها لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته وأقوات. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والغنيمة من كل بر والسلامة من كل إثم. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت. أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وأسألك أن تتوب علي توبة عبد ذليل خاضع فقير بائس مسكين مستجير، لا يملك لنفسه نفعا ولا ضرا ولا موتا ولا حياة ولا نشورا. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من نفس لا تشبع ومن قلب لا يخشع ومن علم لا ينفع ومن صلاة لا ترفع ومن دعاء لا يسمع. اللهم إني أسألك اليسر بعد العسر والفرج بعد الكرب والرخاء بعد الشدة. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت. أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
آية الكرسي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فيكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. الله ولي الذين آمنوا يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور والذين كفروا أولياءهم الطاغوت يخرجونهم من النور إلى الظلمات أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. حي على خير الأمل حي على خير الأمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفرك ربي وأتوب إليك. صلاة العشاء قصر. We praying صلاة القصر. إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين. يا مرسل الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته وأقوات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا اغفر لنا وارحمنا وتب علينا برحمتك الواسعة. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالديه وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. اجزهما بالإحسان إحسانا وبالسيئات غفرانا. وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته ورفع درجته. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
اللهم صل على
الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بما زي رزقي وإنما أطلبه بقطرات تخطر على قلبي فعجل في طلبه البلدان فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران لا أدري في سهل هو أم في جبل أم في أرض أم في سماء أم في بر أم في بحر وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد واجعل يا رب رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا وماقده قريما ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم. اللهم صل على
That works. صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ما كان على النبي من حرج فيما فرض الله له سنة الله في الذين خلوا من قبل وكان أمر الله قدرا مقدورا. الذين يبلغون رسالات الله ويخشونه الذين يبلغون رسالات الله ويخشونه ولا يخشون أحدا إلا الله. وكفى بالله حسيبا. ما كان على النبي من حرج فيما فرض الله له سنة الله في الذين خلوا من قبل وكان أمر الله قدرا مقدورا. الذين يبلغون رسالات الله ويخشونه ولا يخشون أحدا إلا الله. وكفى بالله حسيبا. وكفى بالله حسيبا. ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين. وخاتم النبيين وكان الله بكل شيء عليما. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا الله كثيرا وسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور وكان بالمؤمنين رحيما. تحيتهم يوم يلقونه سلام وأعد لهم أجرا كريما. يا أيها النبي إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا. وبشر المؤمنين بأن لهم من الله فضلا كبيرا. ولا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين ودع أذاهم وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على رسول الله وآله الأطهار على رسول الله وآله صل على محمد وآل محمد.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، اے میرے باوفا ہے بہن بیردا، میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، تیری جاگیر سے چل پڑا قافلہ، میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، تجھ کو دیکھے بنا چین آتا نہیں، تجھ کو دیکھے بنا چین آتا نہیں، نوک نیزہ پہ سر تیرا ملتا نہیں، میں زیارت کروں کس طرح یہ بتا، میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، لاج رکھ لو بہن کی برادر میرے، لاج رکھ لو بہن کی برادر میرے، خاک مکے تل میرے سر کا پردہ بنے، حکم دے دو ذرا منتظر ہے ہوا، میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، لاج رکھ لو بہن کی برادر میرے، لاج رکھ لو بہن کی برادر میرے، خاک مکے تل میرے سر کا پردہ بنے، حکم دے دو ذرا منتظر ہے ہوا، میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، تیرے بازو مجھے راستے میں ملے، تیرے بازو مجھے راستے میں ملے، میں نے چادر سمجھ کر وہ سر پر رکھے، بازوؤں سے تیرا پوچھ پوچھتی ہوں پتہ میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، دیکھ کر بہن کو دشت میں ننگے سر، دیکھ کر بہن کو دشت میں ننگے سر، کیا حیا گئی چھپ گئے ہو کدھر، خود چلی آؤں گی تم بتا دو ذرا میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، میں نے بچپن میں لوری سنائی تجھے، میں نے بچپن میں لوری سنائی تجھے، میں نے چلنا سکھایا تھا بھائی تجھے، راہ پر خار پر مجھ کو چلنا سکھا میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، میں نے بچپن میں لوری سنائی تجھے، میں نے بچپن میں لوری سنائی تجھے، میں نے چلنا سکھایا تھا بھائی تجھے، راہ پر خار پر مجھ کو چلنا سکھا میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، وہ تیری لاڈلی وہ سکینہ تیری، وہ تیری لاڈلی وہ سکینہ تیری، چلتے نا کیسے جب خاک پر گر گئی، دیکھتی رہ گئی وہ سوئے القمہ میرے غازی کہاں ہوں، صلوات۔
بارے گی گر بلند کر صلوات۔ ہر ایک گھر میں کربلا بسا گیا حسین نے، ہر ایک دل میں کربلا بسا گیا حسین نے، نظر نہ آتا تھا خدا دکھا گیا حسین نے، دکھا گیا حسین نے، ہر ایک دل میں کربلا بسا گیا حسین نے وہ نور ہے کو خاک ہے بشر کیری بساک کیا وہ نور ہے کو خاک ہے بشر کیری بساک کیا بنا کے خاک کو شفا کھا گیا حسین نے ہر ایک دل میں کربلا بسا گیا حسین نے علی کا یہ بھی شعر ہے کہ تیر سے مرے گا کیا علی کا یہ بھی شعر ہے یہ تیر سے مرے گا کیا پہ سر کو خاک پہ اٹھا ہنسا گیا حسین نے ہر ایک دل میں کربلا بسا گیا حسین نے عرش فرش پہ ہے جگہ حسین ہی حسین ہے عرش فرش پہ ہر جگہ حسین ہی حسین ہے وجود ہی عشیق کا مٹا گیا حسین نے ہر ایک دل میں کربلا بسا گیا حسین نے چلے ہیں گرو خضر حسینیوں کی راہ پر چلے ہیں گرو خضر حسینیوں کی راہ پر جو مگے خطوں کا راشکا عطا کیا حسین نے ہر ایک دل میں کربلا بسا گیا حسین نے صلوات
جی پر محمد والے محمد صلوات احمد آمد حرم شاہ کے دربار میں فاتحہ بسم اللہ اللہم صلی اللہ علیہ محمد آمد آمد حرم شاہ کی دربار میں ہے آمد آمد حرم شاہ کی دربار میں ہے صبح سے جشن کا غل شام کے بازار میں ہے، صحبتیں عیش و طرب مجلس غدار میں ہے، اور شور و فریاد و بکا عطرت اطہار میں ہے، شور و فریاد و بکا عطرت اطہار میں ہے، نوبتیں بجتی ہیں دشمن تو خوشی ہوتے ہیں، فاطمہ پیٹتی ہیں شیر خدا روتے ہیں، فاطمہ پیٹتی ہیں شیر خدا روتے ہیں، آگے آگے تو ہے سجاد جھکائے گردن، پاؤں بیڑی میں گلا طوق میں گردن میں رسن، پاؤں بیڑی میں گلا طوق میں گردن میں رسن، مثل خورشید فلک شرم سے لرزاں ہے بدن، چاک ہے غم میں گرے بان قبا تا دامن، چاک ہے غم میں گرے بان قبا تا دامن، بیٹھ جاتے ہیں تو جھنج لا کے اٹھاتے ہیں لئیں، ارے بوڑیاں نیزوں کی شانوں میں چبھاتے ہیں لئیں، بوڑیاں نیزوں کی شانوں میں چبھاتے ہیں لئیں، اور پنڈلیاں سوجی ہیں اور طوق سے چھلتا ہے گلا، سخت ایذا میں ہے فرزند شہ کرب و بلا، سخت ایذا میں ہے فرزند شہ کرب و بلا، خار تلووں میں ہے مقتل سے جو پیدل ہے چلا، ارے دھجیاں پاؤں میں باندھے ہے وہ نازوں کا پلا، دھجیاں پاؤں میں باندھے ہے وہ نازوں کا پلا، اس کی مظلومی پہ بے تاب حرم ہوتے ہیں، اور دیدہ حلقہ زنجیر لہو روتے ہیں، دیدہ حلقہ زنجیر لہو روتے ہیں، پیچھے بیمار کے ہے قافلہ اہل حرم، چپ ہے تصویر سے گو یا کہ کسی میں نہیں دام، چپ ہے تصویر سے گو یا کہ کسی میں نہیں دام، دختر فاطمہ زہرا کا عجب ہے عالم، ارے تھر تھری جسم میں ہے اٹھ نہیں سکتے ہیں قدم، تھر تھری جسم میں ہے اٹھ نہیں سکتے ہیں قدم، رو کے فرماتی ہیں کس گوشے میں جائے زینب، ارے ہاتھ کھل جائیں تو منہ اپنا چھپائے زینب، ہاتھ کھل جائیں تو منہ اپنا چھپائے زینب، کبھی سجاد سے کہتی ہیں بآہو زاری مجھ کو دربار کیا فت سے بچاؤ واری، مجھ کو آفت کی سے بچاؤ واری، مجھ کو دربار کیا فت سے بچاؤ واری، کر کے زاری وہ یہ بیاں کرتا ہے وہ آزاری، صبر فرماؤ جو مرضی جناب باری، صبر فرماؤ جو مرضی جناب باری، کم نہ کچھ مرتبہ آل ابا ہوئے گا، آسیوں کا اسی پر دے میں بھلا ہوئے گا، آسیوں کا اسی پر دے میں بھلا ہوئے گا، آمد آمد حرم شاہ کی دربار میں ہے۔
صلوات اللہم صلی اللہ. The families of tonight's sponsors are Mr. and Mrs. Saadat Kazimi. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for the following marhumeens of their family: Sayyida Altaf Hussain Shah, Sayyida Kareem Khatun, Shahid Aqdas Kazimi, Sayyida Zamir Zahra Kazimi, Tawkhir Zahra Kazimi, Sayyida Sughra Bibi, Sayyida Bibi, Sayyid Hamid Ali Shah, Allah Ditta Shah, and Nazir Hussain Shah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآله. Today is the last majlis by Sheikh Faiyaz Jaffer. He was gracious enough to help us commemorate the Aza of Imam Hussain. We are greatly thankful to him and we pray for his success, inshallah. And we also pray that he will return to this institution once again, inshallah. He'll remember us in his dua. With the next weekend, I want to remind you, we'll start the program on again Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Dr. Amjad Hussain Shah will be here that weekend. I request you all to be here. We'll start as usual with Salatul Maghribain, inshallah. Immediately after Maghrib, we'll start the program. So it will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday next weekend, inshallah. With a loud salawat, let's welcome Sheikh Faiyaz Jaffer once again. Salawat. Allah. Sallallahu. Muhammad wa alihi. Thank you.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن الرحيم إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي يا رسول الله وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا مولاي مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا غريب يا مذلوم يا عطشان كربلاء، ما خاب من تمسك بكم ولا من من لجأ إليكم سادتي، يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق والأصدق القائلين: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، إن الدين عند الله الإسلام، آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد. Today, no matter what country that you go to or what outlet that you examine, you will find an abundance of literature, rhetoric, language, specifically targeting and criticizing religion more broadly. In this country, for instance, in the United States, in a study taken in 2020, it suggested that 33% of Americans consider themselves spiritual but not religious. And this increase by the year 2025, predictions suggest that more than 50% of this country, in a matter of a year and a half, will consider themselves to be spiritual and not religious. Aside from reflecting upon what this phrase means in specific, we come and we see that there is a whole host of language and rhetoric targeting religion and faith communities in specific. A belief, for instance, that religion is outdated. A belief, for instance, that religion is no longer important in the world that we live in. A belief, for instance, that religion is in opposition with science. In fact, scientism, which is a reality that was born in the 17th or 18th century, but has manifested itself and developed its language over the last several decades, suggests that, for instance, the only real knowledge is the knowledge of this world, of this natural world. And anything of the metaphysical world or any conversation around rhetoric around the metaphysical world is totally insignificant and not relevant, and actually something that should be dismissed in its entirety. Religious communities, like we know, are not only under attack from the external forces of those who don't believe in God, but even within our own communities as well. Someone says, why do I need to go to the mosque when I could turn on the majlis online? Why do I need to participate in prayers? For I can actually get closer toward God when I'm performing exercises or I'm engaging in other sort of rituals that are not the standing and bowing and prostrating in this language that I don't understand in the first place. Why should I fast during the holy month of Ramadan? It only makes me tired and angry at my family. Let me do small things that increase my spirituality. There is nothing today that's more popular than this term spirituality. But at the same time, there is nothing that is that much more unpopular than the term religion or faith. And many a times we see these two realities clashing with one another. But like we know within our tradition, if we go back to the roots and the rhetoric and the language, this religion of Islam, as taught to us in its purity by Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, fills the spiritual void that so many within humanity are seeking toward allowing for their hearts to be fulfilled with. When it comes toward specifically targeting the religion of Islam, like we know, there is an abundance of rhetoric, Islamophobic rhetoric, that has been utilized over the last 15 plus years in order to isolate Muslims and the religion of Islam. If you go to any library in this country, if you go to any bookstore in this country, if you go on Amazon and type in books on Islam, you're going to find dozens upon dozens of books by Islamophobes. The most famous, perhaps, amongst them, a guy by the name of Robert Spencer, many of you must be familiar with him, who has written language attacking the Holy Quran, speaking in really poor language about the Messenger of God, alayhi salam. But if we rewind the history of this country to the late 80s, and specifically 1996, you see this really important book written by a man by the name of Samuel Huntington, a book famously known as Clash of the Civilizations, a book that has been studied, a book that has been reflected upon and deduced, and till today is so prominent in college classrooms around this country, in which he posits his famous thesis around Islam versus the West, this truly fabricated rhetoric positing the Western world being in total opposition with the religion of Islam, and that eventually they're at the point of clashing, thus leading to the fact that we need to making sure that we are not allowing for Islamic rhetoric and Muslim communities to develop within this country. Till now, if you take a look, and if you just Google Clash of the Civilizations by Huntington, 1996, you will see that this particular thesis and this particular book has been studied by some of the most sort of meaningful and the most influential and charismatic right-wing politicians in this country, and it was actually utilized by our past president, TD backwards, right, 45, in terms of his campaign leading up to his presidency in 2016, where he utilized language consistently dismissing Islam and Muslims. My friends, I say all of this as an introduction for us to realize that there is a movement today by academics and by scholars from various parts of the world toward isolating the impact and the meaning of religion and religious community specifically. And for today's discussion, insha'Allah ta'ala, I want to reflect upon this question of whether or not we actually can take any benefit from religion more broadly, and then more specifically from the religion of Islam. Does Islam make more meaning or allow for more growth or cultivation of my heart than what someone else might suggest on the peripheries or on the externals? Or is Islam solely a faith and solely a religion, like many would often claim that the only purpose or the only objective of religion is to cultivate a relationship between the individual and God? The assumption is, again, just to throw this out, that the purpose of religion is that it's only for an individual in terms of their relationship with the Creator. So all of this talk about how religion brings benefit to community should be thrown into the trash. I want to respond toward this particular query or this particular question in three different dimensions. The first dimension in terms of understanding the historical roots of religious criticism. Secondly, toward diving a little bit deeper into the language around the dismissal of religion. And thirdly, how the Holy Quran and ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam actually emphasize that the religion of Islam and this faith that we love and that we adore and that we subscribe to is far more meaningful than solely our relationship between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also allows for impact in the communities that we live in. So let's jump right into dimension number one. But before that, one salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali. When we take a look at the historical roots of religious criticism in the first place, it's obvious that the first society or the first civilization that was very openly in opposition toward religion and toward religious communities develops during the time of the Enlightenment period. At this clash between those who are experts in the natural sciences, scientists, for instance, in opposition with people of faith. Which is why when we go and when we study religion in this country, if you take a course in religious studies, perhaps at any college, at any university in the United States, you often start by talking about the Enlightenment period and how scientists were in total opposition with the church, who sought toward dismissing the entirety of the natural sciences and who made really strong violations and claims against the most important, groundbreaking scientists of their time. Individuals like Galileo and Copernicus, who when they came forth and they claimed that no, the earth is not the center of the world, we know exactly what would happen to them. When they claimed that the sun is the center of the universe, and that it is the earth that rotates around the sun,
immediately you see that the church dismisses these claims and these statements and even puts some of the most prominent scientists to death. What happens naturally is that these two communities, they begin to fall into two total extremes. Those individuals in the church who are adamant, dismissing all of the claims of these scientists. And scientists who would dismiss religion and faith community and God in its entirety because of the same exact reason. So you see that these two groups, they fall into these polar extremes. Later on, we see that the variation in the language that was utilized to criticize religion develops into a couple of different factors. And these factors exist till this very day. Let me give you a couple of examples. Amongst the most popular criticisms today of religion is that religion creates individuals who are arrogant. And if you take a look today, perhaps there's some truth to this reality. I say it all the time, that many a times when you see people who start to pray more often, or they start to fast during the month of Ramadan, or they start to read a little bit about the message of the Prophet, or they start to recite ayat of the Holy Quran, the more that someone feels that they're becoming religious, they actually many a times become more judgmental. And of course, that's not religious, that's someone who is doing religion wrong in its entirety. What actually we realize from the Prophet ﷺ and from the Imams of Ahlul Bayt is that as their station raises, they become more humble in front of the eyes of people. But nonetheless, we see in the world that we live in today, there's a sense of what is often thrown around as academic elitism. Someone knows a little bit more, they studied a little bit more, they read a little bit more, and what they often do is they dismiss everyone else just a little bit more. And so many of those criticisms around religion suggest that people who are religious or who claim themselves as leaders within faith communities, they tend to be far more arrogant than the layman. This is number one. A second major criticism of religion is that individuals who are religious often dismiss other people and condemn them toward the most difficult of accounts, and that is the fires of hell. I'm sure you've seen this in the world that we live in today. Many a times you see that every individual, they claim that they are with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And anyone who stands in opposition with any one of their viewpoints, well, they're going to go to hell. Even within our own communities. Someone has a different reading in Islamic history. Someone has a different take on matters of Islamic jurisprudence, and immediately we cast them toward the fringes. We say, this guy's not Muslim. This guy's not Shia. He's Shia light. He is this. He is that. Like, what are we doing? At the end of the day, we see this within communities of religion, communities of faith, far more broadly. You don't believe in this? Well, guess what? You're not going to go to paradise. And this language and this rhetoric, like we know, doesn't really do anything in terms of building community, and certainly doesn't create a positive environment or a positive perception of how we see religion in the first place. So there are criticisms after criticisms when it comes toward matters of religion and faith communities, but one really important point for me to throw out here. Every single one of the mainstream criticisms of religion today don't actually have anything to do with religion. Every one of them have to do with people who observe religion. You see the difference? The way that I practice religion is not the religion of Islam. The way that the Messenger of God, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, practices religion, that's Islam. In Islamic law, we have two terms. Just to open up one quick parenthesis for all of your benefit. A term in Islamic jurisprudence known as hukm al-dhahiri, and a second term known as hukm al-waqi. Hukm al-dhahiri is the judgment and the conclusion that a scholar of Islamic law and jurisprudence makes on the basis of what they understand to be the truth. Which is why you go and you open up the book of Islamic law on any particular question, and many a times the marja at the end of their statement says, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Because in accordance with their research and their understanding, they came to this conclusion. And they believe that to be the truth. But they leave the room open for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment to say, no, you're wrong. Rather, this was the truth and you got it wrong because of X and Y and Z. for instance. Hukm al-Zahiri is the law that we have to establish because that is what the sources have deduced and that is what we have been led to. But what it might be in the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may be a little bit different. You follow what I'm saying? We submit to that which is in front of us, but very well we could have made a mistake. But don't worry, because as we are taught in the ahadith of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, when the jurist makes a wrong conclusion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still writes them one reward. And when he makes a correct conclusion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes for them 2 rewards. And we as mukallafeen, we who are just trying our best to fulfill our duties and our responsibilities, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala absolves us of any sin or of any vice or of any transgression. When you go back to every single one of the mainstream criticisms of religion, religious people are judgmental, religious people cast people to hell, religious people are not welcoming. Every single one of these criticisms are not about religion itself, but they're about people who claim to be religious themselves. Everyone see the difference? And this brings me then toward the second dimension of the discussion. So then what exactly is the problem of people when it comes toward religion or religious communities? There are a couple. I want to run through 2 really, really quick, but nonetheless super important points of why so many people have so much animosity toward religion. The first one of these is the belief that religion controls people. You hear this all the time. Why does God tell me to pray? Let me just do whatever I want. God has given me my own body. Don't tell me how I should dress. Don't tell me how I should act. Don't tell me when I should fast and when I should go for pilgrimage. Let me do whatever I want. Because I know that my responsibility is to God. So who is X or Y or Z to tell me how I should act? There is a belief and a restriction that many people see when they recognize or when they observe what they call organized religion. They would say that organized religion leads to hierarchy. Hierarchy commands me how to act, what to do, and is too rigid in terms of my approach with how I should practice my day-to-day. Make sense, the criticism? What's the response? The problem, my friends, is not the fact that religion is restrictive. The real problem, my friends, is that our perception of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is restrictive. Let me break it down for you in an example. When it comes toward every one of these signs, these stop signs that we see on the road, or the sign that tells us the speed limit, we would hope that local politicians and law enforcement, they have come to a conclusion of why the speed limit on the highway is 55 or 65 miles an hour, and why all of these stop signs are present in these local streets, perhaps because there's data to support that putting a stop sign over here is going to implement a lot more easy flow of traffic. And that someone who drives more than X amount in this speed limit in this particular area, they could be led to a sense of detriment to themselves and toward those around them at the same time. We might disagree, and we might say, I don't really care what the stop sign has to say, nor do I care what the speed limit has to say. And we act in accordance with the way that we feel is the right way to act at that given point. Keep this to the side for one moment. The idea is, hopefully, that law enforcement, local politicians, and we never want to assume that they are good people, right? Let me just throw that out there in parenthesis. But nonetheless, let us assume and believe that they have best intention by putting out all of these stop signs and all of these speed limit signs for the best interest of the community at large. Many times people can buy into that. But for some reason, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He legislates law for us, our perception of God, like we talked about last night, is so negative. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling me what to do. Who is God to tell me how I should act? Our arrogance and our pride. Rather, we forget that Allah Azza wa Jal, He is Arhamar Rahimeen. He is the most merciful of those who show mercy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He commands us to these laws because He loves us, because He cares about us, because He wants our growth and He wants our success. When my children wake up in the morning, they tell me, Baba, I don't want to go to school. I tell them, doesn't matter, you have to go to school. As they get older, they're going to be thankful for the fact that I never let them sleep in when they didn't want to go to school, because they realized that them going to school all of these days in first grade and in second grade and in third grade, and I hope they're listening right now on the women's side. One day they're going to come and they're going to say, thank you, Baba, because you pushed me to go to school. I became whatever I became in terms of success. I learned all of these things. And if you didn't hold me to account, you didn't scold me when I did something wrong, you didn't push me to go, I would have ended up someone who is totally different than who I am today. Because at the end of the day, we keep a good opinion of our parents. We keep a good opinion of our teachers. But when it comes to our opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah's angry. Allah's so mean. Allah's so restrictive. No. If we just change our perception of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, this God of mercy, this God of love, this God of beauty, this God who is so patient with us, this God who wants our success at every moment and at every juncture during the course of our life, we wouldn't see law as restrictive. We would see it as a mechanism for our growth and our development and a means to mold us into allowing for us to be amongst those who attain the height and the pinnacle of human perfection. So number one, when someone claims that I hate religion because religion is so restrictive, it's not the fact that they see religion as restrictive. It's the fact that many a times their perception of God is so negative and they see so much darkness as opposed to the beauty of who this Lord of ours truly is. A second major criticism of religion, many a times today, suggests that, again, like I said before, that religion doesn't allow for the growth of communities and civilizations and the success of the human being more holistically. It only makes individuals resort to their own homes and worry about themselves and their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I want to respond toward this query that is, again, very evident many a times in many pockets in the world that we live in today, with the third dimension of our discussion. How is it that religion is actually beneficial, not only to the individual, but to our communities at large? Let me go through a couple of important points. Number one, my friends, is that when it comes toward this perception that religion does nothing in terms of its offerings to community and society, number one, religion feeds for every single human being the intellectual curiosity that we have from a very young age. Let me explain. A child, when they're very young, in the early stages of their development, from the months of 6 until 18, 6 to 18 months old, a child is often very curious, which is why when it starts to develop its ability to see various colors, it starts to look up at the sun, starts to look up at the sky. It is sort of more desirable when it sees colors that are really bright, like that of red or orange or yellow. Because innately within the human being, we're a curious human being. Have you ever seen a child the first time that it put its feet in the water in the ocean or the beach? Or the first time that a child is playing with sand? Or the first time that a child puts their feet in grass? Again, that child is in a moment of utter happiness and contentment and bliss. As that child gets a little bit older, every single one of us, we experience the same. We went and we asked our parents, why is the sky blue? Why are the clouds white? Why is the grass green? And we asked question after question in the stage of our curiosity from ages 2.5 to about 4. What happens many a times is that this curiosity that we have, the door gets shut. Why? Because of us. Us as parents, us as community, us as society. I don't know why the sky is blue. It's blue because it's blue. I don't know why the grass is green. Who cares? I don't know why it's raining today. Just stop asking me questions. And so we close that door of curiosity, and when we do that, it becomes that much more difficult to pry that door open later on during the course of our lives. You see, my friends, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the human being with essential questions that we consistently need to answer. Where did I come from? Where am I going? What is my purpose in this world? Many a times people ask questions exactly like these ones. But it's so easy for them to dismiss the questions the minute that these questions get posed in their mind. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us with the fitrah, this innate nature, this innate potential for us to see the reality of the world around us. But this curiosity that we have has been stunted. So when someone asks the question to themselves before they go to sleep in the darkness of night, why am I here? What is my purpose? Why didn't God create me during the time of the Prophet of God? Why didn't I live on the day of Ashura with Imam al-Hussein? Why do I live today in the year 2023? Why don't I live in the year 3023? These questions are valid questions. These questions are good questions. But it's so much easier for me to dismiss them immediately and think about what I'm going to have for breakfast tomorrow. Why? Because it occupies too much time in my mind. And we don't have time for that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the religion of Islam, has consistently told us to think about these questions and to reflect upon the nature of your own creation at every opportunity and at every juncture during the course of your life. Let me give you an example. God says within the Holy Quran, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, that we have placed our signs in the horizons and within their own selves. Everywhere around us is the sign of Allah. The sun, the moon, the stars, the oceans, the trees, the rivers, these are all signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many times does God tell us within the Holy Quran? And we rotate the night into the day and the day into the night. How many times does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begin a verse within the Holy Quran and says, Alam tara, do you not see? Do you not see? It literally means put down the Quran and go out and see. But for whatever reason, again, we're always looking down and we don't look up. I'll give you a quick anecdote. During the pandemic a couple of years ago, I was living in New York City with my family, and it was a rainy day and no one was able to get out of the house that day. Couldn't get out because of the pandemic and so on and so forth. And in the midst of that rain, this thunder and lightning, and in the middle of the afternoon, finally the rain subsided and the sun came out. And my daughters then, they were, 3 and 5 years old. And perhaps it was the first time that they can actually remember that they saw a rainbow appear in the sky. And so my wife said, oh, look at the rainbow. And my 2 children, they rushed to the window. They're so excited, right? They're kids and they love to see rainbows. Even adults love to see rainbows. And they're staring at it and they're smiling and they're laughing and they're super happy. And both my wife and I, we got our phones in order to take a picture of my kids looking outside the window, looking at this rainbow. My older daughter, she says, Baba, give me the phone. I said, for what? She says, I want to take a picture of the rainbow. I says, you're looking at the rainbow. Look out the window. Why do you want to see my phone? She says, then why are you taking pictures? And I said, oh, you're right. Why am I taking pictures? I'm trying to tell her to appreciate the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I'm not teaching her any sort of a good example. I'm literally capturing it on my phone as opposed to utilizing the moment as a learning opportunity. We're so busy looking down that we forget to look up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, within the Holy Quran, He commands us in the most practical manner. Every page within the Quran talks about these signs of Allah, the nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put on display. Why? Because there's a need and a desire within the human being toward fulfilling this intellectual curiosity that each and every one of us have. So there's assumption that religion does nothing for the growth of the individual and only commands us toward praying and worshiping and so on and so forth. That can be thrown into the trash with at least this one point. That the human being is commanded toward reflecting. And when we reflect and when we contemplate, what happens? رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. In the dua of the Prophet of God, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions within the Holy Quran, every day after Salatul Isha, the Messenger of God would stand outside of his house and he would look up at the stars and he would say, رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. All of these stars in the horizons, I know with absolute certainty you didn't create this in vain. There's a purpose behind all of this. So save me from the fires of hell and allow for me to admit myself into paradise. What do we learn from this statement of the Messenger of God? Except that through this appreciation and understanding of all of the signs of God, it allows for us to be a little bit more humble. And when we're a little bit more humble in our own selves, we're more humble with the creation as well. You see what I'm saying? So at the very least, religion commands us to a sense of seeking answers toward these most fundamental questions by means of contemplation, by means of reflection, which lead us toward a sense of humbling ourselves in front of God and at the same time humbling ourselves in front of the creation. Number one. A second command from the religion of Islam that allows for us to see the beauty of this faith tradition of ours is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us and calls us toward a sense of social justice at every juncture and at every opportunity during the course of our lives. There is no phrase that is as popular as standing for social justice like we see today. But I mean justice more broadly, but oftentimes in the most practical manners. Amongst the biggest problems that we see in the world today, contributing to all of the social inequities that we have, perhaps there are two vices. The first one of them is racism and bigotry and discrimination within our communities, and a second is a sense of economic injustice within our communities all across the world. The biggest causes of the major social ills that we see in the East and in the West is due to racisms and due to a sense of economic inequities. Take a look anywhere in the world today, and you all know that much better than I. Number one, when it comes toward racism, and when it comes toward the arrogance that the human being develops in their mind, develops in their heart, we see that this was combated day one in terms of Muslim history. And that was on the day when Iblis himself stands in front of Allah and he states, خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. That you created Adam from dust and you created me from fire. I'm better than him. I'm not going to prostrate toward him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, leave this language. You submit to my command. And you see this throughout the life and throughout the custom of the Messenger of God, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam as well. Who would never allow for a moment any language or any rhetoric toward demeaning someone who was a non-Arab, or someone who was not from Quraysh, or someone who was not from Hijaz, or someone who did not speak the language, or so on and so forth. In the example of Bilal, you see this. And even on the day of Ashura, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam teaches us this lesson. It is stated, if you read the Maqtal, that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam at 2 points, at 2 times on the day of Ashura, demonstrate a sense of affection in this manner to those who had fallen down from their horse and called out their last call. It is stated that when John, the slave of Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, he falls down from the horse, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam rushes toward him. And he places his right cheek on the cheek of John in a sense of a show of affection and love. To which he responds, Men mithli, khaddi ala khad ibn bint Rasulillah. He says, who is like me? My cheek rests on the cheek of the son of the daughter of the Messenger of God. The only other time that the Imam alayhi salam does that is when he sees the battered body of his own son, Ali al-Akbar. The black slave and the son of Rasulullah, Ali al-Akbar himself, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam doesn't differentiate in terms of how he shows them care and love and affection. On one level, the religion of Islam totally abolishes this notion of superiority because of language, because of tribe, because of clan, because of so on and so forth. And on the side of economic justice, we see it in its most obvious fashion. That we are obligated toward paying certain taxes during the course of our lives. We have to pay khums and we have to pay zakat, and we have various sadaqat. We have zakatul fitra. And when it comes to many of these charitable taxes, particularly the obligatory ones, those who are higher on the socioeconomic scale, they naturally have to pay more. 20% of your savings for someone who makes $5 million is different than someone who makes $1 million, is different than someone who makes $100,000, is different than someone who makes $1,000. At the end of the day, we see that there was a mechanism put in place by Islamic Sharia in order to combat these social inequities and these social justices. So for anyone who claims that, for instance, religion doesn't serve a purpose in terms of it bringing global impact, we see the total opposite of that by means of these examples of social justice within our communities. A third mechanism which allowed for a positive benefit of religion, like we mentioned before, is the fact that the religion of Islam numerous times commits itself toward a notion of humanity. Let me give you an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states within the Holy Quran, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ, that surely the believers are brothers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says within the Holy Quran, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنَ إِحْسَانًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says within the Holy Quran, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Numerous times within the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the importance of family. He talks about the importance of community. He talks about the importance of caring and providing and taking care of your parents and taking care of your children and taking care of one another, believing brothers and sisters. Throughout the ayat of the Holy Quran, you see this as a consistent theme. The idea is that the religion of Islam is not only meant to be something that is personal between me and God, but it's meant to being something that also allows for the growth of our communities and civilizations and our families as well. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. That you will never attain righteousness until you give out of that which you love the most. What do we love? We love wealth. We love time. We love ourselves. You will never attain righteousness until you give out of all of these realities of yourself, because this world is too short. And all of this rhetoric and language in the world that we live in that tells us only worry about yourself, only think about yourself, you only live once, you need to take a break, only care about yourself, worry about your own health. At some points, at some junctures, yeah, do that. You can't make a difference in the community if you're not making a difference within your own self, but not to the detriment and to the negligence of those within our communities, particularly the most isolated and marginalized. Which is why the Messenger of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahumma salli. In the early days of the prophetic message in Mecca, the first groups of Muslims to believe in the message of Rasulullah were three. Amongst them were slaves, amongst them were the poor, and amongst them were women. What's the common denominator between slaves, the poor, and women? Other than the fact that every one of these three groups were the most isolated within their communities. Because it was the message of Islam that brought people on the brinks and on the fringes of society, and he brought them a sense of value. Today you fast forward, my friends, 1400 years later, we see no difference. Those who are the most isolated within our communities are still women, are still those who are poor, and slavery in terms of all of its various definitions. Meaning that it becomes our job as believers, as Muslims, as those who uphold these teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, toward supporting these dynamics and these communities within the fold of our mosques and within the fold of our institutions, and supporting them to the best of our abilities and capacities. And a fourth positive benefit of religion, as we see, is the fact that it feeds the spiritual relationship between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it doesn't stop with us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me explain. Undoubtedly, there's something really beautiful, though we often take it for granted, about the discipline of prayers, where we pray in the morning and in the afternoon and in the evening. And the idea beyond these prayers, like we know, is again to create the sense of humility between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And someone who's truly serious about their prayers, as we learn from these most perfect and beautiful of examples, and that is the Prophet and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them. What we learn from them is that their obedience and their worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed and cultivated within their hearts a sense of care for the communities that they lived in. Let me explain. When we talk about the Prophet of God, like we just mentioned, no one worships Allah in the same rigor and in the same manner as Rasulullah Muhammad. No one. but it was the Prophet of God who was also ready to support the most marginalized within his communities. Similarly, when we talk about Amir al-Mu'mineen and his worship and his obedience, we know everything about the merits of the worship of Ali alayhi salam. But very little do we talk about the generosity of Ali alayhi salam. We narrate these anecdotes and these stories about how Ali was in the darkness of night. He was walking in the streets of Kufa and he sees that elderly woman who was carrying the wheat and the barley and so on and so forth. We mention in passing how Ali ibn Abi Talib was the caretaker of the orphans and the widows of Kufa and so on and so forth. But very little do we spend time toward understanding what exactly allowed for Ali to be Ali in that manner. You see, my friends, his worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at night cultivated within his heart the fact that he was ready to care for the orphans and the widows of Kufa. Zayn al-Abidin, what do we know about Ali ibn al-Hussein? We know about his dua, we know about his grieving for Imam al-Hussein, we know about his worship, but what we often neglect is the fact that immediately after the death of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam in the city of Medina, homelessness increases. Homelessness in the city of Medina increases the day after the martyrdom of Ali Zayn al-Abidin. The governor of Medina writes to Damascus, please send rations so that we can distribute it to the poor of Medina. He writes back and he states, you've never complained to me for decades that there is a shortage of food or of resources in your city. Why are you telling me that today? He says, because Ali ibn Hussein died. And he used to be the one to be out on the streets giving food and wheat and barley and drink to the homeless of Medina. What do we learn from Ahlul Bayt? That at the end of the day, this worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us and cultivates within ourselves to also be at the support of our community. Which is why when Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, he narrates many years later, after the death of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, it's mentioned in some of our books of hadith, I forget which one specifically, he states that when I was performing ghusl of the body of my father Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, there were 3 types of marks on his body. Amongst them, of course, were the marks from prostration on his forehead and on his palms and on his knees. Amongst the marks on his body were the marks of that which he had to endure from that voyage from Karbala to Kufa and from Kufa to Sham. But the 3rd type of mark on the back of my father Zayn al-Abidin were bruises, fresh bruises from the weight that he used to carry of the wheat and the barley, distributing it to the people of Medina. My friends, when it comes toward understanding religion, the problem is that many people haven't seen the beauty of our faith. They haven't been exposed to the light of this religion and the light of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. And many a times it's because we have allowed solely for this faith and for this practice and for these rituals to be within our walls, and we fail to export the ideology externally. And my friends, I'm not saying, nor do I believe in proselytizing our faith within our own communities or in societies or in local churches or whatever it might be. That's not my thing. My whole thing, my friends, is to recognize that we have beauty and we have light and we have the best of examples. And I want to share these examples with those around us. But it starts with us committing ourselves to them truly, holistically, with regards to who they were. In the words of Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam, he states, "Kunu du'atan lana samitin." They call people toward us quietly. Act in accordance with the etiquette and with the virtue and the beauty of Ahlul Bayt. Peace and blessings be upon them. And you will see that everyone will find that religion brings benefit, not only to the self, but to the community at large. And on these days when we come and when we grieve and when we weep, let it be a mechanism and a means to inspire us that after these days of Aza for Imam al-Hussein, salamullah alayh, that we commit ourselves toward upholding those values in these streets and in these communities that we live in. Because with this beauty that we have, my friends, comes a sense of really important responsibility. We hold the best of examples and the best of teachers and the most beautiful and the most luminous of lights. Why wouldn't I want to share the light of Muhammad and Ali and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein to the world via my etiquette and via my action. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. My friends, in these early days of the month of Safar, we know that they were incredibly difficult and trying on the Prophet's family, peace and blessings be upon them. And from what we understand and recollect within history, are only a few glimpses with regards to their incredible tragedy, peace and blessings be upon them. And we don't know truly the impact or what it is that they had to endure, particularly these women and children, these granddaughters of the Messenger of God and of Ali and Fatima, peace and blessings be upon them. You know, sometimes you see a child who's really tired. They haven't slept really well. And you feel bad for them. They're screaming, they're crying, they can't eat. And you look at them and you wonder, or a child that is sick, a child that is ill, your own children, when they can't sleep at night because they have a fever, we hold them close to us. We do the best that we can toward offering them some sense of solace. And a child that is going through an illness, that is tired, that is not feeling well, the only thing on their minds is their parents and their belief that their parents are the only ones who can bring them a sense of comfort and contentment and solace. Now I want you to imagine, my friends, what the daughter of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam had to feel, and what she had to endure on nights and days like these as she was in the prisons and in the dungeons of Damascus. It is said that on that night, she was asleep when she had woken up, and she had gone to her Aunt Zainab, and she says, "Oh, my Aunt Zainab," she says, "where is my father, Abu Abdullah? You told me that he went on a trip, but I cannot sleep, I cannot eat, I cannot drink. Please bring me my father, Abu Abdullah." One by one, the women, they tried to console the daughter of Abu Abdullah, when all of a sudden it is said that the guards from within the dungeons of Damascus of Yazid ibn Muawiyah, they say toward Zayn al-Abidin, they say toward Zainab, "Why is this girl crying? Why is this girl screaming?" To which they say that she wants her father, Abu Abdullah. It is said that they send a messenger toward Yazid. Yazid says, if this girl wants Hussein, then give her Hussein. And he pushes forth a platter with the head of Hussein on it, covered with a cloth. It is said that a few moments later, as this daughter of Al-Hussein is weeping and she's grieving loudly, they present it in front of her. She looks up with tears in her eyes. I don't know what she had to endure. I don't know how she was feeling at that moment, but she looks up at these vile men and she says, "I don't want any food, nor do I want any drink. Just give me my father, Hussein." At this moment, they say, "Remove this cloth and you will see your father, Abu Abdullah." At this moment, she removes this piece of cloth and she sees the dismembered, decapitated, severed head of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. She calls out, "Man alladhi aytamani?" Who is the one who has orphaned me? Who is the one who has dyed your beard in your own blood? Who is the one who has bruised your forehead, O my father, Abu Abdullah? She holds the head of Imam al-Hussein close toward her. She begins to clench onto it really tight. She sits down on the ground. She lies down weeping and crying. At this moment, Zainab alayhi salam, she sees her in this state. She goes toward her. She tries to console her. But Imam Zainul Abidin says, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." Oh my Aunt Zainab, leave my sister, for she has returned back toward her father, Abu Abdullah, in the world beyond this one. But some narrate that after they took the body and they performed the ghusl, that one of the ladies, they come toward Zayn al-Abidin and they say, "Yabna Rasulullah, my condolences to you on the death of your sister. But let me tell you, when I was performing the ghusl, I saw these marks on her body and I'm worried about what disease she may have died from." Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, "Oh my sister, those bodies, those wounds on the body of my sister were not of any disease, but if they were from the whips of Shabr bin al-Jawshan on the night of the 11th of Muharram." Matam Hussein, Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.
ہائے سکینہ 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 سکینہ پوچھے کوئی کیوں بند ہے آواز سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ آتی نہیں زندان سے فریاد سکینہ ہائے 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 سکینہ سر سید عالم کا ہے معصومہ کے رخسار سر سید عالم کا ہے معصومہ کے رخسار مر کر بھی اٹھاتے رہے یوں ناز سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ایزا وہ اٹھائی ہے کہ دل کانپ رہا ہے ایزا وہ اٹھائی ہے کہ دل کانپ رہا ہے رلواتے ہیں آنکھوں کو بہت ساز سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ اب شمر کی سیلی سے ڈرے گی نہ مزادی اب شمر کی سیلی سے ڈرے گی نہ مزادی آتی ہے نہ ظالم کو آواز سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ لاشے سے صدا آتی تھی اب ہم نہ ملیں گے لاشے سے صدا آتی تھی اب ہم نہ ملیں گے جب تک تمہیں پانی نہیں مل جائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے نالوں سے سرفراز فلک کانپ رہا ہے نالوں سے سرفراز فلک کانپ رہا ہے رلواتے ہیں نیلاب کسے رخسار سکینہ ہائے ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ پوچھے کوئی کیوں بند ہے آواز سکینہ ہائے سکینہ ہائے سکینہ یا
سکینہ کس سنے آنا دعائیاں قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سنے آنا دعائیاں قیدان سے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سنے آنا دعائیاں قیدان سے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سنے آنا دعائیاں مظلوم دی دینوں کھا گیا مظلوم دی دینوں کھا گیا زندان دیا تنہائیاں قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سنے آنا دعائیاں مظلوم دی دینوں کھا گیا مظلوم دی دینوں کھا گیا زندان دیا تنہائیاں قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سنے آنا دعائیاں بیمار نے رب جانے کہ میں بہن دی لاش پچایا کئی موڑ بازاراں دے امت نے اوڑ ٹرایا نہ گل تو کہ جدا کیتا نہ ہاتھ دیاں کڑیاں لایا قیدان میں مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سنے آنا دعائیاں کدی پوچھ دیے پھوپھیاں تو کیوں ظلم کرے دے لوکی اے رسم شامیہ دی جڑے پتھر مرے دے لوکی اسا اجڑیاں تو کیڑا خاطر آئے کیوں مل لے موڑ سپاہیاں قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سنے آنا دعائیاں دی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا کیدان سے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا مظلوم دی دینوں کھا گئیاں مظلوم دی دینوں کھا گئیاں زندان دیا تنہایا قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا بازار چ سیدہ تے برسات ہوئی پترانی ہائے زہرا جایا تے سر خاک پئی سفراندی اج عرش فرش دیوار سجے کی گھڑیاں ہو گیاں قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا چڑی جنج علی اکبر دی کچھ بالت کچھ مستورا سر زخمی جانجیاں دے زخمات جمیاں دورا لارے دا سر ہے سانگے ہوتے رسیاں پھٹیاں نے پایا قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا کدی پوچھ دیے پھپھیاں کو کیوں ظلم کرے دلوں کی اے رسم شامیہ دی جڑے پتھر مرے دلوں کی اسا اجڑیاں تو کر خطر آئے کیوں مل لے موڑ ستایا قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا بازار چ سیدہ تے برسات ہوئی پترانی ہائے زہرا جایا تے سر خاک پئی سفراندی اج عرش فرش دیوار سجے کی گھڑیاں ہو گیاں قیدان چے مر گئی ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا مظلوم دی دینوں کھا گئیاں مظلوم دی دینوں کھا گئیاں زندان دیا تنہایا قیدان چے مر گئے ہائے روندی سکینہ کس سونیا نا دعایا
ہے سجاد ہے امام، ہے سجاد ہے امام، ہے سجاد ہے امام، ہے سجاد ہے امام، ہے سجاد ہے سجاد ہے سجاد، پاؤں میں یہ بیڑیاں آ گیا بازار شام، ہے سجاد ہے امام، ہے سجاد، پاؤں میں یہ بیڑیاں آ گیا بازار شام، ہے سجاد ہے امام، ہے سجاد ہے امام، ہے بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، بنک زہرا بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، کا کھلا کرے، بنک زہرا بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، اور ہر ہاتھ میں پتھر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بنک زہرا خدا خیر، ہر کے بیٹے پہ ہی شبیر بہت روئے کے، ہر کے بیٹے پہ ہی شبیر بہت روئے کے، اب کو لاش علی اکبر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بنک زہرا کا مار کے ہیں وہاں نیزوں پر زمیں پر ظالم، مار کے ہیں وہاں نیزوں کو زمیں پر ظالم، دفن جس جال اصغر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، ہے بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، اے بنک زہرا کچھ کا غم گور کھڑی دیکھ رہی ہے جگہ، کچھ کا غم گور کھڑی دیکھ رہی ہے زینب، شمر کے ہاتھ میں خنجر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بنک زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بیڑگاہ جانا ہے زینب کو وہاں پر کے جہاں، بیڑگاہ جانا ہے زینب کو وہاں پر کے جہاں، ہر کوئی گوش مان ہے گر ہے، خدا خیر کرے، بن کے زہرا کا کھلا سر ہے خدا خیر کرے
شام کا بازار تھا شام کا بازار تھا اور مصطفیٰ کی بیٹیاں مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین اور شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی سینے پہ جوش آکے پلی سینے پہ جوش آکے پلی جس کی ابا بن میں جلی جس کی ابا بن میں جلی مقدمہ جو کے نشان مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین
السلام علیکم یا رسول اللہ السلام علیکم یا نبی اللہ السلام علیکم یا خاتم النبیین والمرسلین السلام علیکم یا ابا الحسن علی ابن ابی طالب امیر المومنین السلام علیکم یا فاطمہ سیدۃ نساء العالمین السلام علیکما الحسن والحسین شباب اہل الجنہ السلام علیکم ائمۃ المسلمین علی بن الحسین ومحمد بن علی وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان عجل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم قل لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائلا وناصرا ووليا